Hi everyone, my name is Johnson, a certified product owner, a facilitator with Agile Foundation eSchool. I'll be taking you today on a very important topic that relates to Scrum Master as well as their day to day activities. So, the question today would be who exactly is a Scrum Master and what do they do? Before we delve into the topic of today, it's important for us to look at the content of the session. The content of the session relates to the following: 1. Agile roles and concepts. 2. Who is a Scrum Master? 3. What do Scrum Masters do daily? A typical case study will be provided in this context. 4. Conclusion, which marks the end of the session. However, questions would follow which seeks to understand how much the lessons had impacted the listeners by asking questions. Agile as a concept in project management can be seen as a methodology as well as a mindset and an approach to achieving goals. It emphasizes flexibility, adaptation, and continuous improvement in project delivery. Within Agile as a methodology, Scrum specifically as a framework, we have three major roles: the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team. Now, for today's session, would be dwelling more on who a Scrum Master is and what they actually do. A Scrum Master is a coach and a facilitator for an agile development team using the Scrum framework. What that means is a Scrum Master understands the Agile framework, Agile Scrum framework, and then understands the principles around the framework and then communicates that as a coach as well as facilitates meetings, sessions within the context of Agile Scrum ceremonies. Now, taking you through the daily life of a Scrum Master like Nikki from the point of resumption to the point of exit on day-to-day basis. So they resume at 8 a.m. and then exit the office at 5 p.m. And then I want to walk you through all the activities that happens within the life of a typical Scrum Master to help you understand what happens within that field. So between 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., it's actually called morning preparation, which happens around 8:45 to 9 a.m. Of course, Nikki arrives office 8 a.m. or 8:30. So morning preparation happens between 8:45 and 9 a.m. Nikki arrives office, kicks off her day by reviewing the agendas for the morning, checking emails as usual for any urgent messages, and ensuring that the team board is up to date with the latest information. So Nikki arrives office, ensures that whatever email that might have been sent the day before is looked at, as well as ensuring that if there are urgent need or requests from the board, project board in this context, are actually attended to. Now, Nikki proceeds to the daily stand up meeting, which is otherwise referred to as daily Scrum meeting within the ceremonies around Scrum as a framework. Now, Nikki facilitates the daily Scrum meeting, encouraging team members to share updates concisely and precisely. The development team shares updates on what they worked on yesterday, challenges or impediments or pain points, and what they plan on working on today. She notes any impediments mentioned and plans to address them immediately after the stand up meeting. Nikki ensures the meeting does not exceed 15 minutes, which is a typical time box in line with Scrum framework. Note that a developer, in this case John, mentioned that the license to a test automation platform has expired during the course of the daily stand-up meeting and that it needs urgent renewal to enable the team to proceed. Nikki ensures that she do not reply with solution in the context of the meeting because the meeting must be time boxed. Nikki ensures that she takes note of the complaint and then reaches out to the team member who happens to be a development team member later on after the daily stand up meeting. So, in essence, the daily Scrum meeting or the daily stand up meeting is dedicated to establishing what happened yesterday or the previous day. If there are challenges or concerns, can we look at them? Then, what is about to happen today? Do we have all it takes to face the day as we have it? Now, after the meeting, the daily stand up meeting, which must not exceed the 15-minute time box as Scrum framework prescribes, Nikki moves to removing team's impediments as well as supporting the team. This could happen between 9:15 in this context to 10 a.m. in the morning. Now, by doing so, Nikki follows up on impediments, reaching out to John, getting clarity on the issues at stake, trying to understand what happens with the complaint by way of profiling solution and then following through with removing whatever impediment that allows John to function as a development team member. Now, if it relates with finance, say in this context, John relates certain difficulties that borders around finance, Nikki reaches out to the company's finance department to secure approval for license renewal. Since in this context, John's issue borders around licensing of a particular test automation platform that do not allow the development team to proceed. Nikki gets approval from the finance team, gets finance approval as well as release of funds, and then gets the problem sorted. Now, while the finance department works through the approval processes, Nikki must ensure that on that particular day, if there are solutions that needs to be profiled to ensure that John continues their job in this context before finance approves whatever finance amount. Nikki must ensure that John gets an alternative quick fix. This is to ensure that John continues to keep pace with activities as well as ensure that no day goes by without working. Hence, while Nikki ensures continuous communication with John and the team, providing updates on the progress of the license renewal and any interim solution, she also must keep the team informed about the expected timeline for resolution while she provides any alternative solution to ensure that the team keeps pace with time. Because within the context of project management, time is strategic, time must be managed, time must be tracked. Moving on to the next activity between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m., which happens to be the sprint planning. Nikki sets up and facilitates the sprint planning session for the upcoming sprint. So sprints are technically sessions within Scrum framework that allows that each work item is processed. It goes in an iterative manner from a point to another, ensuring that the project team delivers on the mandate, which otherwise is known as the sprint goal. In this same context, Nikki ensures that the product owner and the development team have a shared understanding of priorities and goals for the sprint. Of course, Nikki, as a Scrum Master, must work hand in hand with the product owner because we have a sprint backlog which ultimately was drawn from a product backlog. For every sprint, there must have been a product backlog that each sprint backlog draws her work item. Speaking on, after having drawn work item into the sprint backlog, it is important that the team members estimate each of this work item by virtue of the delivery time or the efforts required to deliver each work item. So it is important that each work item within the sprint planning meeting is estimated by virtue of the effort required to deliver each of the work item for the sprint. This would allow for an accurate timing. This would also ensure that the project keeps pace or keeps track with the timeline set in the first instance. Between 11:30 a.m. and 12 p.m., Nikki goes into collaboration with the product owner. Of course, Scrum Masters goes into dedicated sessions with the product owner for the main reason of aligning and realigning backlog items. After the sprint planning meeting, Nikki collaborates definitely with the product owner, in this context, Mike, who requests a significant adjustment to the current sprint scope. So, this is the challenge. The product owner reaches out to Nikki and requests that a scope be changed. Scope of work, remember, which had been defined before the project had started in the first instance. What do Nikki do in this instance? Nikki, aware that this isn't a typical Scrum process, suggests a separate meeting to discuss the implications and potential risks. Of course, Nikki must always liaise, discuss, have meetings with the product owner to get them aligned with the process, Scrum process in this context, as well as share potential risks of changes as a result of change in scope. In this same context, the diplomatic approach Nikki must take would be determined if they are able to convince the product owner as to aligning the product owner with the business goal, customer need, and then the Scrum principles within the Agile Scrum framework. So if as a Scrum Master, Nikki is able to align the product owner by being diplomatic, talking them through the business need, linking it to the customer's need, linking it down to the Scrum processes, then Nikki is able to tie all three critical components together, and that would make for a great Scrum Master. In this case, Nikki reaches out to the product owner, talks them through, gets them to understand the business need as well as how it relates with the customer's need, as well as how it must align with the Scrum processes. And now, together, they find a compromise that minimizes disruption while addressing the urgent business requirements. So it is important that Nikki liaises or collaborates with the product owner between these hours to ensure that the framework is on track and is followed from end to end. The next point would be that Nikki goes on break between the hours of 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. Nikki takes a break to recharge, perhaps attending a virtual Scrum Master community event or catching up on the latest Agile article or reaching out to other colleagues and then getting to unwind basically. Between the hours of 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., Nikki continues on the journey of continuous improvement. It is important for Scrum framework to align with continuous improvement. This is because while Agile Scrum framework allows a team member to be adaptive, it must allow them to be adaptive progressively. So in this context, between the hours of 1 p.m. to 2:30, Nikki conducts a retrospect meeting to review what had been done, gather feedback on previous sprints. In this case, Nikki gets to understand what happens within all the sprints previously held. Nikki identifies the pain points, if there are issues, if there are concerns, if there are challenges. Nikki now then documents these insights for future reference. Within the hours of 2:30 and 3:30 p.m., Nikki facilitates a backlog refinement meeting. Of course, backlog refinement or product grooming is actually very important because that allows the product owner the access to refine the product's backlog in line with the need of the client. So, should it be that the client had reached out to the product owner seeking changes with respect to changes in events or time or taste or whatever need of the client, the product owner is able to liaise with the Scrum Master, and then during the course of the backlog refinement meeting, Nikki is able to facilitate that session, ensuring that all Scrum processes are followed, and then that the refinement aligns with the context of Scrum framework. So Nikki facilitates basically a backlog refinement session, ensuring that the development team and the product owner have a clear understanding of upcoming user stories, because that's basically what happens. So the user stories may be changed, may be dropped, may be introduced. New user stories may be introduced in this context, and then each of those user stories may be re-estimated, either re-estimated or estimated if they are newly introduced, or however it is, but that the Scrum Master must supervise all these activities, ensuring that the product backlog, the sprint backlog aligns and is updated to the point that the sprint goal would be achieved if followed. Between the hours of 3:30 and 4:30 p.m., Nikki carries on with conflict resolution and stakeholder management processes. Of course, within a typical project, conflict resolution is key. Understanding of conflict resolution falls within the ambit of stakeholder management, which means that a Scrum Master must understand what is happening within the Scrum team, and then understand how to resolve the issues, should there be any, within the Scrum team. So in this case, Nikki becomes aware that the product owner in this context is making independent decisions, for instance, which violates Scrum principles. So in this context, we're trying to look at how Nikki realizes that the product owner is making some unilateral decisions and that violates Scrum principles, and by implication placing unnecessary pressure on the team. Now, if in this exact instance we want to go deeper, and then the product owner had cancelled their sprints in the present past, for instance, and now in the current instance, they are calling for a cancellation of a sprint. Now, Nikki must arrange a private meeting with the product owner to discuss the importance of collaboration and adherence to Scrum principles. During the conversation, she must be diplomatic. We are communicating the impact of these decisions on the team morals and overall effectiveness of the Scrum framework. So, you are looking at the moral justification for this decision. You're looking at the teams boosting the morale of the team members, and then you're trying to convince the product owner of the overall effectiveness of the Scrum framework. That's the job of a Scrum Master. Even in this context, Nikki must emphasize the need for open communication, collaboration, and respect for Scrum roles and responsibility. In this context, she is upholding the principles that guide Scrum as a framework, which is a critical component of what a Scrum Master must do. In this case, she must also offer support and guidance to help the product owner align with Agile values. She must not do this in the presence of the Scrum team. She can do this privately to ensure effectiveness of communication. So in this case, Nikki would have effectively resolved whatever conflict there is and then ensure that the team aligns and that the team follows through with the Agile Scrum framework from start to finish. Between the hours of 4:30 and 5 p.m., look at the other side of the story by considering Nikki resolving another issue that borders on the development team, not necessarily the product owner in this case. Now, Nikki in this case was informed that members of the development team had an argument regarding programming language that best fits the development of a particular feature. So this led to delay as those who could write in Python language insisted that it should be the language to utilize, while those who could write using CSS had the same insistence. Now, Nikki was informed about this, and then she steps in to address this conflict within the team regarding the implementation approach for a feature. She organizes a team meeting, obviously, to openly discuss the concerns. At the end of the day, she encourages constructively the team to reach a common resolution. Now, following the meeting, she communicates the agreed upon approach to stakeholder management, ensuring that she manages expectation and addresses all concerns that may have been thrown open in the first instance. At the end of the day, at 5 p.m., Nikki ends the day by making a note of any pending tasks for the following day. Before logging off, she checks in with the remaining team members to ensure they have the support they need during this challenging time. Additionally, she sends a comprehensive summary email to stakeholders, giving reports as to what she had done, providing updates on challenges to the sprint, ongoing conflict resolution efforts, and a plan to address the team members who had either by direct or indirect action, gone outside the stipulations of the project. Now, in this context, I would like to conclude by stating that it is important to understand that agile mindset for delivering project emphasizes flexibility, adaptability, transparency, and self-organization. This means that there is no one way to delivering an agile project, meaning that an agile project is a flexible project whose team member must be open to adapting to change for the purposes of improving, and then team members must be open to transparency, and then team members must also be self-organizing, must understand what they should be doing at every given point in time, and they are doing it even without being monitored. Now, the question would be, what do you think would happen when a development team member resigns, for instance, on account of an irreconcilable difference or conflict with another team member? What do you think the Scrum Master should do? Kindly put your response on the chat box, rather in this context, the comment section, explaining what you think the Scrum Master should do. Thank you so much for listening.